A man stands beneath a gray sky, soaked to the bone. Rain slides down his back, puddles around his shoes, and chills him to the core. He scowls, curses the clouds, his phone dead and his meeting cancelled. Just a few feet away, a child dances in the same downpour barefoot, spinning with delight, laughter rising like a song. Same storm, yet such different responses. The Stoics would say, the rain is not to blame. Your opinion of the rain is, welcome to Stoic Dharma. Here, we slow down not to escape the world, but to see it more clearly. In today's reflection, we explore a fear that quietly defines our lives, the fear of death. Not death itself, but our thoughts about it. Could it be that suffering arises not from reality, but from how we interpret it? Our world today moves fast. Every hour brings new alerts, breaking news, tragedies, successes of others, social comparisons that erode our peace. We react to each one, unconsciously, as if they were personal attacks or failures. And in many ways, we live in a culture conditioned by fear, especially the fear of loss, of not mattering, of not having enough time. But the Stoics invite us to question, are these fears rooted in objective truth, or are they inherited responses, reflexes trained by habit and repetition? If we never stop to ask, we'll continue assuming that reality is what we feel. Yet what we feel is so often the product of how we think. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, born into slavery and physical hardship, knew intimately the difference between suffering that comes from outside and suffering that is self-made. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Think of that carefully, not what happens to you, but how you react. He did not deny that life brings pain. He did not pretend that betrayal, illness, or injustice do not exist. But he understood that between the event and our anguish lies a judgment, and that judgment can be seen, questioned, and even changed. In fact, that is the heart of Stoicism, not to eliminate emotion, but to understand the role we play in creating it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, once sat in his military tent under threat of war, illness, and internal betrayal. Despite the weight of empire and uncertainty, he wrote quietly to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength, in Stoic terms, is not bravado or toughness, it is inner steadiness. The ability to meet any storm with a grounded awareness that the only true battlefield lies within your own perception. The Stoics taught a method of separating what we can control from what we cannot. This simple distinction, if fully grasped, can dissolve immense stress. You cannot control other people, external outcomes, or the passing of time. But you can, with practice, control your values, your choices, and the story you tell yourself about what happens. It is this story that makes all the difference. The man in the rain feels miserable not because of the weather, but because of his belief that it shouldn't be raining today. The child feels joy because she has not yet attached an expectation to the sky. There is a profound freedom in realizing that your thoughts are not reality, they are merely interpretations. Consider this. How often do you suffer more from the idea of a thing than the thing itself? A job interview looms, and your mind spirals through every possible failure. Yet when the day arrives, it is often not nearly as catastrophic as imagined. The Stoic thinker Seneca warned us long ago, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the pain we carry comes not from the facts, but from the fantasies we attach to them. And so it is with death. The fact of mortality is real. Every breath we take is borrowed, but the terror many of us feel is not born of death itself, it is born of our opinions. We think death is an enemy, a failure, an interruption. We imagine it as darkness, separation, silence. But these are metaphors, not facts. In fearing death, we often forget to live. We spend our days clinging, hoarding, chasing, reacting, trying to outrun something that cannot be outrun. And in doing so, we miss the very life we're afraid to lose. The Stoics, however, approach death not with denial, but with contemplation. They practiced a form of mental rehearsal memento mori, remembering that we must die. Not to become morbid, but to become more alive. Knowing that time is limited turns attention from what doesn't matter to what does. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power. Be good." This is not fatalism, it is clarity. This view echoes across cultures. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu scripture, Krishna teaches that the soul is eternal. It does not die with the body. Weapons cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it, and the wind cannot dry it. Whether taken literally or symbolically, such teachings challenge our narrow, fear-driven concept of existence. They invite us to see ourselves not as isolated beings, but as temporary expressions of a much larger rhythm. Fear, then, is not the necessary response to death, it is a choice. A deeply conditioned one, yes, but still a choice. And if we can learn to choose differently, we may discover that what we feared was never as solid as it seemed. Just as the rain is not sadness, and just as silence is not emptiness, so too is death not always destruction. It may be, as many sages suggest, simply a return of dissolving back into the fabric from which we came. So as we move deeper into this journey, let us pause with a question. Is it really death we fear, or the idea of death? Is it the end itself, or the stories we've layered on top of it? In the next part, we'll meet the thinkers who walked this path before us. Not in theory, but in lived experience, a crippled slave, a ruling emperor, a senator entangled in deadly politics. Each one looked death in the eye, not with dread, but with discipline, and a curious, steady gaze. He was born into slavery, crippled by cruelty, before he could speak freely. His master broke his leg in anger, leaving him with a limp that followed him for the rest of his life. He owned no possessions, had no social rank, and knew no comfort. And yet, Epictetus would one day become one of the clearest voices in human philosophy. He did not inherit his wisdom, he earned it, by losing everything. Men are disturbed not by things, he taught, but by the views which they take of them. This was no abstract theory. It was a conclusion born from deep personal pain. Once freed from slavery, Epictetus chose a modest life. He opened a small school, not to speak about virtue in theory, but to train people to meet life with clarity. He reminded them that death, like pain or misfortune, is not inherently tragic. What is tragic is the story we attach to it. Death is nothing terrible, he said, but the opinion that death is terrible, that is what is terrible. In a world where we are taught to fear the end, Epictetus asked us to question what we believe about it and why. Centuries later, in the golden palaces of Rome, a very different man would echo those words. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the Roman Empire, carried unimaginable responsibility. War, plague, betrayal, he faced them all. Yet every evening, in a quiet space, he turned inward and wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These were not lines meant for public glory. They were reminders to himself to stay anchored, to remain awake in the face of uncertainty. In the heart of power, Marcus struggled with the same fears we do. He wrote, "Death smiles at us all. All we can do is smile back." That simple sentence, written during a military campaign, reveals a calm acceptance. Death, to him, was not a defeat. It was part of nature, just as sleep or the setting sun. As emperor, he could command armies but not time. He chose instead to command his perspective, reminding himself that nothing external, not even death, could truly harm the soul. Then there was Seneca, statesman, playwright, and teacher to the infamous Emperor Nero. He lived a life of tension, wealth and danger, wisdom and politics. And yet, he returned again and again to the practice of letting go. "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," he wrote. Seneca knew the mind's tendency to invent catastrophes. He urged his readers to examine whether what frightened them was real or merely rehearsed within. When his own life was ordered to end by imperial decree, Seneca met death not with panic, but with poise, as if confirming the final lesson of his teachings. These three Stoics, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca, lived in vastly different worlds: a slave, an emperor, and a senator. Yet all came to the same insight: death is not to be feared. What we fear is our judgment of it. And that judgment is not reality, it's a mental creation. They understood something modern life often obscures: you can't escape death, but you can escape the fear of it. At the heart of Stoic thought lies a simple but powerful division: the dichotomy of control. There are things we can control: our actions, values, and interpretations. And things we cannot: our health, reputation, the past, and death itself. When we confuse the two, we suffer. When we focus on our judgments instead of the facts, we amplify pain. The Stoics taught that we should strive not to eliminate death, but to eliminate the unnecessary fear surrounding it. This idea, that perception shapes suffering, appears in other traditions too. The Buddha taught that with our thoughts, we make the world. Hindu scripture reminds us that the soul is eternal, beyond birth and death. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am," but the Stoics take it further. "I choose how to think, therefore I am free." Across cultures and centuries, the wisest minds seem to agree our inner world is where freedom begins. The Stoics didn't seek to suppress emotion, they sought to understand it. When fear arises, they asked us to pause and examine it. Is the fear based on something real? Or is it a reaction to a thought we've never questioned? Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to return to the present, because the present is all we ever truly possess. Fear, especially fear of death, pulls us out of the present and into speculation. That's why Stoic training wasn't just about reflection, it was about preparation. Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, was a daily practice. Imagine the worst, not to attract it, but to soften its hold. Epictetus told his students, "When you kiss your child, say silently, 'I am kissing a mortal.'" This was not coldness. It was clarity. When we remember impermanence, we become more present. We love more deeply, we waste less time, and this, ultimately, is the irony of reflecting on death. It is not about dying, it is about how to live. When we stop fearing death, we stop fearing life. We stop hesitating, postponing, performing. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The fear of death often disguises itself as busyness, distraction, or a pursuit of things that don't matter. By accepting the end, we begin to appreciate the middle. So the Stoics didn't conquer fear by force, they dissolved it with truth. They didn't promise to make death easy, but they showed us how it could become less heavy, less personal. They reminded us that the end is part of the natural order and our peace lies in understanding, not resisting, that flow. When Epictetus limped through the streets of Greece, when Marcus Aurelius sat beneath the stars, writing quietly in his tent, when Seneca composed his final letters, none of them were avoiding death. They were embracing life, and their writings remain not as monuments of perfection, but as roadmaps for anyone willing to look inward. In the next part of our reflection, we'll walk through how this ancient wisdom can meet us in the modern world, at work, in relationships, and within ourselves. Because death may be inevitable, but how we relate to it, that's still our choice. Imagine you've just opened your inbox. There's a message from your supervisor, short, blunt, and ending with a question mark that somehow feels accusatory. Immediately, your chest tightens, thoughts start spinning. Did I mess up? Am I in trouble? Within seconds, your nervous system responds as if you're under threat. And yet, what has really happened? A few words on a screen, neutral, but your interpretation, the story you unconsciously wrapped around those words, is what creates stress. This is the living essence of Stoicism, not to suppress your reactions, but to separate them from reality. We tend to believe that our emotions come directly from events, that anger arises because someone insulted us, that fear emerges because something scary occurred. But Epictetus would gently correct us. Emotions follow judgment, not events. It is not things that trouble us, he said, but our opinions about things. This may sound abstract until you notice it in action. Two people hear the same criticism. One feels crushed, the other feels grateful for the feedback. The difference is not in the words, but in the interpretation. This insight becomes especially powerful when applied to the modern workplace. Jobs today are fast-paced, competitive, and often uncertain. It's easy to feel reactive, especially in environments built on deadlines and performance metrics. But the Stoic pause, a moment of awareness between stimulus and response, can shift everything. Instead of replying in irritation, you breathe. You observe. You ask, is this within my control? If the answer is no, then it becomes an opportunity to practice release. If yes, then you respond deliberately, not out of fear, but with clarity. One helpful exercise is writing down what happened and what you told yourself about it. For example, my boss questioned my numbers. Then, I told myself I'm not good enough. Finally, is that thought useful or true? In many cases, the thought isn't grounded in reality, it's inherited from old stories, fears, or unmet expectations. Journaling, a favorite Stoic practice, becomes a way to catch these inner narratives before they control your emotions. Relationships, too, are fertile ground for Stoic insight. We all carry invisible expectations into our connections: how someone should treat us, how they should react, how they should love. When those expectations are unmet, we often suffer. But the Stoics remind us, other people's actions are outside our control. Our judgments about them are not. Seneca said, "A wise man is content with himself." That doesn't mean isolation. It means we stop outsourcing our peace to others. Consider this scenario. You text someone and receive no reply. Hours pass. Your mind fills the silence with noise. They're ignoring me. They must be upset. But pause, what do you truly know? Only that a message was sent and not yet returned. Everything else is conjecture. Here, a Stoic practice can be helpful. Try imagining 3 different interpretations of the same event. Maybe they're busy. Maybe their phone died. Maybe they're simply resting. You'll find that your distress softens, not because the facts changed, but because your viewpoint expanded. Stoic thought also offers deep guidance for our inner world. We are often our harshest critics. We compare, we strive, we feel perpetually behind. In the age of social media, we see curated success everywhere and quietly ask, why not me? But the Stoics would encourage a different question. What is mine to do today? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This radical simplicity brings us back to action. Not comparison, not wishing, but showing up, one moment at a time. A profound Stoic exercise for cultivating presence is called negative visualization. Imagine losing what you now take for granted: your home, your health, your loved ones. Not to induce despair, but to spark gratitude. When you visualize loss, even briefly, the ordinary becomes sacred. That morning coffee, a quiet afternoon, a friend's laugh. These things are not small, they are the substance of life. And by remembering their impermanence, you begin to cherish them more deeply. One of the most liberating Stoic tools is the dichotomy of control. Simply put, it divides the world into 2 categories: what is within your control and what is not. Your actions, choices, and thoughts. Yours, the past, the behavior of others, the weather, or even death. Not yours. When we confuse these, we suffer. But when we return to this distinction again and again, we recover peace. It is not passivity, it is precision. You stop wasting effort on the uncontrollable and focus on what truly belongs to you. Modern psychology, especially cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT), has built on this very foundation. CBT teaches that our thoughts influence our emotions, which in turn shape our actions. By identifying distorted thinking patterns like catastrophizing, black and white thinking, or personalizing, we can challenge and reframe them. Aaron Beck, the founder of CBT, credited Epictetus as a key influence. What Stoics taught with scrolls, modern therapists now echo with science. You don't need a crisis to begin applying Stoic thought. In fact, it's in the ordinary moments, delays, rejections, criticisms where it quietly works its way into your life. Every time you choose not to react immediately, every time you notice your thoughts before believing them, every time you return to what is in your hands, instead of grasping at what isn't, you're practicing philosophy. Not as a subject to study, but as a way to be. To build this practice, small daily rituals are more effective than grand resolutions. Begin the morning with a brief reflection. What is within my control today? At night, write one sentence about what tested your peace and how you met it. These aren't habits for perfection, but for awareness. Over time, you build a quiet strength, not because life is easier, but because your mind is steadier. You will still feel disappointment, you will still face uncertainty. The Stoics never promised immunity. What they offered instead was agency, the ability to respond rather than react. When you stop trying to control the world and start watching your own judgments, you enter a different kind of freedom. One that doesn't depend on circumstance. In a world that sells distraction, speed, and endless opinion, Stoicism calls you back to stillness. It asks not what the world is doing, but what you are choosing to see. The outer chaos may continue, but within, you can remain anchored. You can breathe, you can think, and in that space, between the event and your judgment, your life quietly transforms. What are you most afraid of right now? Not in the abstract sense, but in that quiet place beneath your daily routines. Is it the loss of something precious? The ending of a chapter? The possibility that all your efforts won't be remembered? Now pause. Look closely. Is it truly the event you fear or your thoughts about it? The Stoics teach us to ask this question with tenderness, not to dismiss the fear, but to understand it. Often, what we fear is not death itself, but the meanings we attach to it. And from that attachment, suffering arises. We began this journey with a simple image: a man and a child beneath the same storm, one miserable, one full of joy. This contrast opened the door to the Stoic view that our judgments is not the events themselves cause distress. The rain was just water, the meaning was invented. The same is true for most of life's hardships. The traffic jam, the silence after a text, the missed opportunity, these are not inherently painful. It is our resistance to them that hurts. In Part 2, we explored how this understanding took shape in the minds of ancient Stoic philosophers Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca. They were not removed from suffering, they lived through slavery, war, exile, and grief. But rather than collapse under fear, they observed it. They practiced distinguishing between what was theirs to control and what was not. And they found, within that distinction, a path to inner peace. Not invincibility, but clarity. Part 3 brought this wisdom into our daily world. We examined how simple moments, an email, a conversation, a delay become gateways to reaction, or to reflection. We explored tools like the Stoic pause, journaling, and negative visualization. These are not lofty exercises, they are humble, steady acts of remembering. Remembering that your peace does not depend on everything going well, but on your ability to respond well to anything. And now we come to the final turn in the path, the reflection that ties it all together. The fear of death is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers through our busyness, it hides behind our perfectionism. It fuels the silent belief that if we just do more, we might outrun the inevitable. But the Stoics say, you don't need more time, you need more presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is not morbid. It is freeing. Death gives urgency to life. Not panic, but purpose. When we make peace with our mortality, we begin to live differently, more deliberately, more attentively. We stop wasting time on things we cannot control. We stop postponing joy. We begin to love the ordinary, the smell of morning air, the way light falls through a window, the voice of someone we cherish. We remember that these are not small things, they are the essence. Imagine life as a journey through a forest. You don't know when you'll reach the end. You don't control the twists in the path or the storms above. But you do choose how you walk, with resentment or with grace, with grasping or with gratitude. The Stoic doesn't pretend to predict the future. They simply choose to meet it prepared, not through force, but through perspective. Not with control, but with alignment. Even in grief, this philosophy gently holds us. We grieve because we love. And the Stoics never asked us not to love. They only asked us to understand that love does not have to cling, that loss is not betrayal, that when something ends, it does not erase the meaning it once gave. Seneca wrote, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." And yet he lived with calm, because he knew that tears and peace can live side by side. One of the greatest gifts of Stoicism is that it returns you to what is truly yours, your breath, your attention, your intention. When the world feels chaotic, these are the anchors. You cannot control the market, the media, or the moods of others, but you can return to your own stillness. You can listen before reacting, you can pause before panicking. And in that space, something ancient awakens a quiet sovereignty. The power not to dominate, but to remain unshaken. This is true freedom. Not the freedom to do anything you want, but the freedom to not be ruled by your impulses. Not the freedom from difficulty, but the freedom within it. Freedom to choose compassion when offended, to choose patience when rushed, to choose courage when afraid, to choose presence when distracted, and all of it begins not with effort, but with awareness. Let us return to the metaphor where we began, the rain falling on the man and the child. This time, imagine you are both, the part of you that resists the rain, that flinches, contracts, and complains, and the part of you that remembers how to dance, how to laugh in the downpour, how to feel the cold and still say, "Yes, this too is life." The Stoic path is not about erasing one or the other. It is about choosing again and again which part you listen to. You are not your thoughts. You are not your fears. You are the one who sees them. And in that seeing, you are already free. The world will continue to spin. People will come and go. Some days will feel heavy. But when you remember that your judgments create your suffering, you also remember that you can release them. You can step into a moment without clinging. You can let go without losing. You can live fully without needing to hold everything forever. So today, may you walk a little slower. May you listen a little deeper. May you breathe a little more gently. And in that quiet, may you notice the space between your thoughts and the truth, between your story and the event, between your fear and the freedom that waits just beyond it. Thank you for walking this journey with us. See you in the next meditation.